Hi learners, we are going to look at the first analytical drawing, and we're going to zoom in to see more clearly what is it that we need to do. So I'm going to go and zoom in at that moment to see what is it that we need to do. So there's a table of description, and then there's a table of graphics of a number of common mechanical features. So these are the descriptions and these are the mechanical graphics. So you need to, the instruction basically asks for you to find the descriptions and link it to the graphics that you will see here at the bottom. Okay, so if you look at the first one, here we have a cutting plane, and if you view cutting plane, this is basically a cutting plane where there's a dark line here and a dark line there, and there's a long short, which is a chain line, and then there are two arrows on both sides of the darkened lines, and there's a labeling AA. That is regarded as a cutting line, and that's going to be C that we're going to put in there. Okay. And then we have a grub screw. A grub screw is a screw that has no head really, that it only has a little thin part for the screwdriver to fit in. So if you're going to scan here what a grub screw is like all around here, and you're going to find that the grub screw is here. It only has a part where the screwdriver tip fits in, and it has no real head. So that is Q, and we're going to put Q in here. Okay. And then we are going to look at number 3. Number 3 is going to be a square on a shaft that we discussed in our notes. So we're going to look at a shaft, and we're going to find that that is a shaft, and that diagonal there actually explains that this is a square on a shaft. So we are going to label that in for number 3. Right. So we're going to go to number 4, and number 4 is third angle orthographic projection. This is very important, third angle orthographic projection. We also have number 15, which is first orthographic projection. So what's the difference? Last year you were taught that. So if we scan that one here is our one projection symbol, and the other one is here. So it can either be D or E. Which one is it going to be? The third orthographic projection symbol is going to be D, and I'll tell you the reason why. Because the two circles, the two concentric circles, the circle within a circle, always will be formulated on the side of this shape here, which has the smaller part. So the concentric circles form here on the smaller part, right? Then we classify that to be as third orthographic projection. Should this move over to the bigger side of this shape here, then it becomes a first orthographic symbol. So we are going to label that third orthographic as D. Then we go to the next one, a key way in the shaft. A keyway in the shaft. So we're going to scan a keyway in the shaft. We spoke about it in our notes, and we find a slot, and that slot is going to be right there. There's the slot, so that's going to be M. Okay, so we're going to put M down. Okay, and then we have hatching of adjacent parts. So we're going to look at G, because they are all different parts together, different metal components, and they've all been cut, and they are all adjacent to one another, and that's why they take different hatching. So that's a piece of metal, that's a piece of metal, this is a piece of metal here, and they've been cut right through, and that's why they are all hatched differently. Okay? They are not one piece of metal, a single piece. They are different parts. This is a bottom part, and these two are situated on top of that. Alright, so The adjacent part is going to be G. You can check your work. Then a diamond knurling. We spoke about a knurling. A diamond knurling is this what we see here. It's a handle with a diamond grid on it, and that's going to be A. Right? Then number 8, a tapper on a shaft. A tapper on a shaft. Now we're going to look at that. We scroll down. There's a shaft. Now the shaft can go from that thickness to thin and still part of the shaft. That J means that this is a tapper. That part is a thinner part of a shaft, which goes like that. So that is going to be J. Okay, we're going to fill in J there. And then an S-break we spoke about, which means it continues, component which continues. There's an S-break. It is going to be labeled as R. A spring washer is the next component. If you scan through your components, your graphic components, you're going to find a spring washer here. A spring washer is a washer that has a little opening there, and it forms, the one side is slightly higher than the other side. So when you are going to turn in your nut here, it's going to force the spring washer to actually be flush, and that means there will be tension on the nut, which basically means it will not turn out. So L is going to be labeled as the spring washer. Let's go to the opposite side. We have a shoulder on the shaft. We go to the shafts. There's a shaft. We've done that one. This is the shaft. There is a thinner version of it. It doesn't have this part here which forms that tapper part, but now there's two shoulders on the side here which basically refer to the one shoulder on a shaft. So I'm going to put O in there. So I'm going to put O there. Then a full section. That is a section which has been cut right through. So we're going to look at where the sections are, and here you will find that this component was cut right through. That part there is not hatched, but that's a web or a rib that we spoke about, and it's situated in the middle. That's why it's not cut, and it will never be hatched. So this part here shows hatching, which has been cut right through, so that's going to be I. Okay, and we're going to put there a full section is I. Then we are going to move to a bolt. That's a very easy one. That's going to be H. A bolt is H. Here's a bolt head. That's the body part. Threaded portion here, non-threaded portion there. So that's going to be H. Then we move to the next one, number 14, an internal screw thread. We spoke about that in our notes as well. Internal screw thread. So we're going to scan on our page, and that's going to be P. Right? How is it different to the one that we spoke about? This is just the view from the top. So a double circle where the outside circle is slightly disappearing and drawn faint means that that is a threaded hole inside a piece of metal. So the screw is going to go from the top down into that. That shows that there's a threaded hole here. If there were no double circles here, it would have just been a hole. Just a simple hole. There's a difference between a hole and a threaded hole. A hole has no thread. Okay. So we continue. That being number 14, and that's P. So we go to first angle orthographic projection, and that's where we already took that one. So this, where this concentric circles is formulated or drawn on the bigger side of this symbol here, that would indicate that it is a first orthographic projection symbol. So we're going to put E down there. A bearing. We spoke about a bearing in our notes, and if you scan where a bearing is on our page, that is going to be F. There's the shaft. There the bearing appears on top and it goes behind the shaft and comes out the side. It has been cut, and the crossing tells us that that is a square part there, and that is the basic symbol for the bearing, right? And that I'm going to put in my table here as F. Then number 17 is a bush. Now a bush is a component which serves as a spacer, where a bolt size the bolt body might be too small for the actual hole that it's going to go in, or the shaft might be too small, so you can use a spacer, and the spacer goes, the shaft actually goes through that part there, because that's a hole there, and it widens the gap for it to go into another component. So this here, T, take a look at it, that T there is a bush, where that part can actually fit in here, and then it widens the actual shaft. Okay, that's bush can also be used as a spacer. So that bush is going to be T. And then a nut is very straightforward. That is going to be B. There's a nut, so I'm going to put in B as the label for number 18. Part section, as we said, has to do with wavy lines. That's the only diagram here that shows wavy lines, so that's going to be K. I'm going to put K in there. And shaft, the last thing that we did not touch on here is going to be the shaft, which is just a normal rod, a thick rod, which is going to be S. Okay, that basically concludes the first part of your analytical. We are going to draw your attention to the side on your right, which deals with that freehand drawing that you see there. Now if you look at the instruction here, they show you a pictorial view of a bracket, and these of a shaft assembly with a cutting plane. Now this grey area is a cutting plane, so we're literally taking a grinder or a saw and we cut that away, and we take the white part and we remove it, and we are going to view this from that direction where the white part is not there, and we need to show what must be hatched and what will be left unhatched. Alright, so you need to make a freehand drawing of this twice the size. Right, a freehand drawing of that twice the size. If you look at the instruction, a sectional front view, that is what you're going to draw. So I'm going to just move that up a little bit. So if you are going to do that, you're going to start with a center, and I'm going to draw a cross, and that is that cross that I have there. Right, let me make it slightly smaller so that you can get the whole view of what I'm doing. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to start with a cross, and I'm going to do my first circle, which is going to be that circle that I'm going to have there. Remember, twice the size, so you must just draw it slightly bigger, double the size actually. And then I'm going to draw that circle there as well. So I'm going to draw that circle, and I can draw it faint. I'm just drawing it very roughly, but I'm sure you're going to do it much neater. It should be freehand. And then there's a line going that way. So I'm going to draw a line from here going that way. And I know at some point there's going to be a corner coming down. So a corner going down, and then it's going to go to the inside, and then it goes right down. There it goes right down. And at some point it's going to stop and go to your right inside, and then you're going to draw that up there. You're going to draw another part up here until you reach the top again. Right? That is what you have there, that is what you see there. And then of course this is just going to join that part over there. So you will have to draw that there. You might want to go lower here. So now when I have that, I can actually take my pencil and I can darken it. Right? I'm going to darken all these items here. Right? I'm going to draw that line, darken it. There we have it. And now, everything will be hatched besides this part here. Right? Besides this part here. That is a shaft that goes through. This is one component. That's a shaft that goes through this hole. So when you cut, that shaft is going to take a certain hatching. Because that's one component. I can actually take it out. Because it's two components, that is taking that hatching that way. This is another component. But this here is called the web. That's in the middle. A web, or it's a rib. That will never take hatching. So we're going to hatch this in the opposite direction, like that. And because it's a freehand drawing, you can just freehand hatch it like that there. And then this does not form part of the web. So you can hatch that as well. Remember how you do that. You can start at one end and just carry on like that there. Okay? There we go. And that basically concludes this first analytical drawing, which consists of part A and part B. But just before we conclude, I just want to show you, should this drawing be marked in the exam or in the test, we will give you half a mark for each of the lines that you've correctly drawn in. So these are all half marks. Half a mark for that. This will be a full mark for the circle, full mark for the circle. The two half marks is a full mark. And then of course you will get a hatching mark here, a hatching mark there for not hatching the respective web, and you will get a hatching mark there. Right? So if you count your marks, you're going to find 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 with the hatching, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So that will give you almost 14 marks in total, right, if you mark. Right, I hope you enjoyed that one.